Okay, good morning, colleagues. I understand the music has been switched off, so we just start. I'm very happy to see you all who are connected to our opening event of this first edition of the European Week of Teachers. We have a lot of people also online as we're live streaming this event via Facebook and Twitter, or X as it's called now, and other social media channels. I'm very happy to have you all here, and especially a warm welcome also to our speakers who are joining us today. And I would like to give the floor directly to the ETUCE President, Larry Flanagan, who will be speaking to you now on this European Week of Teachers and our campaign. Larry, the floor is yours. Good morning.
Good morning, Susan. Good morning, colleagues. As Susan said, you're all very welcome to this launch event for the European Week of Teachers. Over the last few weeks, I have attended a number of teacher union conferences in various parts of Europe, and it's very clear that across Europe, teachers and teacher unions and indeed education systems are facing many common problems. And not least amongst those is a growing shortage of qualified teachers. And without qualified teachers, then quality education is impossible. So the ETUS campaign, which Susan will speak more directly about in a moment, and its 10 demands to raise the attractiveness of the teaching profession, is very much aimed at trying to achieve a solution to this growing shortage and the challenge it represents to our education systems, as I say, in all parts of Europe. So in some areas, the biggest challenge is low salaries for teachers. In some areas, the biggest challenge is a lack of professional autonomy. But generally speaking, across Europe, we have to ensure that teaching is seen as a high quality career opportunity, and that we attract into the profession the very best young graduates to deliver effective education. I'm very pleased also this morning that we will be joined by Mr. Michael Tusch, who is head of unit within the directorate within the EU. The EU is an important social partner for ETUS, and clearly is a very influential body in terms of education policy. And I look forward to hearing from Michael in terms of the contribution that can be made at a political level to facing the challenges that education systems face. And thereafter, we will then hear from 3 case studies from different parts of Europe, illustrating the response that has been made by teacher trade unions in the face of some of these challenges. And I hope that the case studies act as a catalyst for further action by our member organisations across Europe, because it is our responsibility as teacher trade unionists to ensure that we find the solutions that are required in order to continue to pursue quality education and the interest of our teachers. So the challenges are great, but we have 11 million members across Europe. So I think we are a strong voice, strong advocate, and hopefully throughout this campaign, we can make sure that voice is heard. So I wish a productive day to all involved. And as I say, I hope this is a catalyst, a springboard to further action as we continue with our campaign. So with that, Susan, I'll hand back to you to speak on the 10 key demands. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And colleagues, can I then ask you please to put up the slides for this presentation? So indeed, as we just heard from our president pointing out the this week's activities. So we are for the first time organizing in ED2CE with all member organizations across Europe, the European Week of Teachers. So starting today with our online opening event of this week, and there are many actions to come, and colleagues from across Europe have already reported about the different actions they're planning this week. Some are having single events, others are really have organized the whole week, building up to massive actions towards the end of this week. And of course, this week also is the week of World Teachers' Day this Thursday. So if we go to the next slide, I will just remind you of the background of our campaign, which is indeed our policy paper on raising the status and improving the attractiveness of the teaching profession, which we adopted in Liège at our midterm conference last week. And it concentrates on 10 key action points. And member organizations have indeed pledged to this campaign to do different actions during our 2-year campaign. If we go to the next slide, this is what our president just highlighted as one of the key issues that we're seeing across Europe, which is the severe teacher shortage, which we seek to address with this campaign in particular. And if we go to the next slide, please, colleagues, this is the document that I showed earlier, the policy document. As you can see, the 10 key action points listed on the left, and how we have translated those into our ETUCE demands, the demands of the teacher unions in Europe, to promote the professional autonomy, to create democratic school cultures, to deliver decent competitive salaries, to sustain safe and secure working conditions, to ensure workload control and work-life balance, support effective career start, to ensure retention of teachers, to ensure the quality professional development, and to embed equality and diversity in all policies, ensure social dialogue, and in particular ensuring a meaningful and strong social dialogue. And of course, the key issue, to value, respect, and to empower the teaching profession. So these are our 10 key demands for the whole campaign that we're running, to value the teaching profession, to invest into the teaching profession, and we call on to attracting more teachers, more young professionals or professionals in general to the teaching profession, and to retain those in the profession who are already experienced in the profession. If we go to the next point, to the next slide, we want to enhance the visibility and the reputation of ETUCE and our member organizations, the education trade unions across Europe, with this campaign, and to address indeed the institutions across Europe, education authorities at national level, at regional level, address our partner organizations, with many of whom we have got alliances, and of course to strengthen within ourselves, within ETUCE, our network, the member organizations network, and of course to raise awareness, to raise public awareness on the need to enhance the attractiveness of the profession, to raise the status of the teaching profession, with the campaign that we have launched. If we go to the next slide, indeed, you see the 10 key demands that we have set up that I mentioned earlier. Each month of this campaign, each month is dedicated to one of these key demands of the campaign. We already focused on health and safety back in June. Then in September, we focused in particular on the recruitment and retention of teachers. And this month is dedicated to the social dialogue, making creating and ensuring meaningful and strong social dialogue at national level, regional level, local level, at European level. So if we go to the next slide, please. Indeed, that's just a reminder about our campaign website, where all the actions of our member organizations this week will be visible. We will upload them and share them, so that we can create a hub of actions, of campaign actions. And the next slide, please. Indeed, so this is our hashtag, Make Teaching Attractive, for the campaign. And you see here some of the visuals, I would say, of our campaign. We go to the next slide, please. These are the actions of this week. So throughout the week, indeed, we will be sharing and giving visibility to member organizations' actions across Europe to raise the status of the teaching profession. In particular, during this week from the Secretariat, we are having this online opening event today, this morning. We have also a contribution from the Spanish Minister of Education, Pilar Alegría, who will be speaking or addressing education trade unions from the Spanish presidency of the European Union, which is currently now under the Spanish presidency. Then, of course, on World Teachers' Day, this is the big highlight, where we'll be working together with Education International as well on different actions. We will be featuring an interview or held by the EU Observer, and then we will be sharing also practical information for teachers and education trade unions. And of course, as I said, giving in particular visibility to our member organizations' actions. Some of our colleagues, I will highlight this, are indeed using this week to build up on their different demands that they have back home at national level, building up to a strike. For example, like our colleagues we will be hearing about later here in Portugal. So this is also an opportunity for member organizations indeed to give to support to our member organizations who are using this week in particular to highlight their key demands. And if we go to the next slide, I think you can see the campaign calendar here. So this is what I mentioned earlier, that each month is dedicated to one of the key topics, the key demands. Indeed, we're now obviously in the European Week of Teachers, where we focus on ensuring social dialogue. And just to give you a glimpse of, so next month we will be in particular focusing on democratic school cultures. It's about collegial governance. It's about involving the teachers, involving the education trade unions in the decision. Then in January, we'll be looking at ensuring quality professional development. So we'll have a big focus on continuous professional development, on training as well in general. So yeah, just to give you a glimpse of what is coming up in the coming months. And then if we move to the next slide, that's actually already the last slide that we have here. So please make use of the hashtag making teaching attractive. You can reach out to us to share your actions, to ask questions, and to ask. We're ready to take them on board as we, as member organizations, carry out the actions and we give visibility to them. And with that, I end my presentation here. I will just have to also announce, I forgot to do that right at the beginning actually, this presentation was supposed to be given by me and our communications officer, who unfortunately is ill today and cannot join us. So I hope the presentation was well received here. So having highlighted our key demands in this campaign, having heard indeed the need that we have in Europe to address the needs of teachers the importance of raising the attractiveness of the teaching profession against that background of teacher shortages in many European countries, but also against other issues that are not working well in the education system. We are looking now at addressing in this campaign, indeed, the issues. What do we need to make the teaching profession more attractive? What do we need to retain teachers in this crucial profession? And what do we need to get more professionals into the profession and to give it that value that it should have in our society for the future and the future generations, our young people in society. Being aware of the context in which we are, of the different pressures that are existing in our society through digitalization, with climate change, with the inflation that we're facing, increasing housing prices. All these build the context in which we see this campaign and in which we see the different actions that we need as education trade unions to carry out, to bring forward, to raise the awareness on this crucial topic. So we are well aware that at European level, the education ministers, when they meet in the council in the Education Council, at European level, they discuss this issue as well. They are very well aware that there is a big, serious teacher shortage across Europe. This has repercussions on the quality, and therefore also the ministers are seeking for solutions. And we know that there's a demand also on the European Commission to address this particular issue. And so I'm very happy today to have Michael Teutsch with us from the European Commission, who will be speaking to us on the perspectives of the European Commission on promoting the attractiveness of the teaching profession. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to you, Michael, to give us your keynote speech and the view of the European Commission on this issue. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Susan and Larry, for the introduction, your kind words. And thank you so much for the opportunity to celebrate or to this European Week of Teachers and World Teachers Day on Thursday together. Yeah, as you just said, the topic that you've raised is actually something that also education ministers have discussed. They in particular shared the challenges in a specific discussion that we've had in spring under the Swedish presidency of the Council. Now it's a bit to see, okay, what can we actually do to address all the challenges? And if I look at the topics that you've just presented, and Susan, so I see that the many topics are there's quite a lot of joint ground with the topics we're working on in the EU cooperation. So I'm really very happy to be able to share with you here the things that we have on our agenda, but then also to discuss with you and participants on what are the focus topics to join ground on. I prepared a little presentation for that. So just, let me just try to share it. And if anybody would let me know if there's something on the screen, someone else who is in the call here.
Yes, we can perfectly see the screen, the slides. Thank you
so much, Susan. No, okay. You just mentioned, Susan. I mean, of course, education policy is done at national level, but nevertheless, the countries, the ministers have said, okay, there's certain things that are common to us that we really want to work together on, and that we want to address in EU collaboration in the policy framework, whose idea is to build something called a European education area. What is that European education area? The idea of a European education area is to build a space where, on the one hand, people, all actors in the education system, being its student, being its staff, can move freely, mobility, exchanges. And on the other hand, there is cooperation on certain key topics in order to improve quality across Europe. So that's a bit the two elements we have in there. The other thing that I want to present to you in the next couple of minutes is a bit that we have a couple of actions which are addressed or which are about teachers specifically. So I want to tell you a bit where we are on those. And then secondly, I will also refer to the issues that all, again, Susan, you've mentioned, digitization, education for sustainable development, what you have, the green transition, how teachers are addressed in those issues. So the first thing I would like to highlight is a little bit that the education ministers about 2.5 years ago, they have agreed a political framework for cooperation at EU level, which is this European education area. So they sat together and they said, okay, these are the topics we want to work on together because they are topics of joint interest. And I just put this first slide in order to sort of underline that already then 2.5 years ago, for the reason that Larry Flanagan mentioned, no good education without good teachers, without support also to teachers. So that already then they identified key topics like quality and inclusion, green digital, but they did a specific dimension. Okay, we should look at specifically what all this means to teachers. And if I say teachers here, of course, you should see it in a very broad term. It's teachers and staff. Of course, it's maybe only partly correct, but when we refer to it, it's all staff. Whatever they are called, for example, staff in early childhood education and care. It's about teachers, but also support staff that you have in school. It's about school leaders. So I would say education personnel caring about education of children. Sometimes we use here a bit of a shortcut, teachers and trainers, so some school leaders, some support staff. Sometimes make me the comments, but apologies for that. We have a rather broad understanding, and we know that the role of teacher is a broad one. So there is great attention on it. The first thing I mentioned, in 2.5 years ago, it's all fine to say teachers are important, we need them, but what is to be done concretely? There were a few actions that at the time were agreed upon. And at the time, there was a launch of a new flagship initiative that we call the Erasmus Plus Teacher Academies in Europe, where the idea was, starting from the analysis that teacher education is still very nationally organized. And so at that time, there were a number of education ministers said, listen, we're very proud of what we're doing here in our national education teacher initial education and continuous professional development system, but they should have a stronger European perspective. So the idea was to test is it possible via networks of teacher academies where different education, initially teacher education and continuous professional development institutions join forces, bring them together to make things move. There was a second call for guidance on national career frameworks and for innovative teaching awards. And the first thing I want to do is tell you a little bit where we are on each of those. I start with the teacher academies. I just mentioned what is this teacher academies. There's huge interest for it. We've simply said, okay, let's do via call for proposal. Let's promote cooperation of institutions of initial teacher education and continuous professional development programs on initial education, continuous professional development, asking them to put their heads together to think about programs that address key challenges that they all have. For example, initial program on key challenges of digitization, of mathematics, science, more inclusion, what have you. Develop some programs, develop mobilities on those issues. And then also, once you've done that, offer it in your institutions, these joint programs that should by that get a stronger European cooperation and also feed it back to policymakers at the end. At the moment, we have 27 of those running. Initially we said we first tested with 25, and for the moment, these projects, the feedback we have is really positive in terms of lots of interest. Some projects run for 1.5 years, others have just started this summer, so they're at an early stage. but I can just confirm there's huge interest given the challenges out there to also join forces stronger together of these institutions. So very interesting, and I think we will sort of continue with future calls for new opportunities to develop such cooperation academies across Europe. The other thing that was interesting, I mean, it's a bit, we had quite some interest on career frameworks. I mean, what's in teacher careers, and there were some countries saying, okay, in order to make the profession attractive and also to reflect what the profession is about, let's see what models exist across Europe in terms of not just becoming a teacher and then just developing a professional basis for a long time, but also reflecting in the careers the different roles that you may have as a teacher, as a support teacher, as a headmaster, maybe helping in the administration, coming back, and so on. And to give a bit more structure on that, we've also had some good practice exchange on that, and some peer learning between countries. Last thing I want to that was mentioned at the time was a bit to also, it was a point about celebrating achievements. And as you know, we have quite many also really interesting projects on Erasmus, on teacher professional development in Erasmus+. So since 2001, we now have an award, a prize, a European prize, which we call the European Innovative Teaching Award, where we simply highlight projects in Erasmus+, which are really good in terms of showing the innovative capacity and really good teacher education and teaching practices. And we've just last week disclosed the winners of this year. We'll have an award ceremony in November. And it's really interesting project to see what's possible if colleagues across Europe put their heads together. And we hope it's a little contribution to also celebrate what's possible, to inspire others and to show the quality that we can find on the ground. I mentioned that these are good projects in Erasmus+. And I should say it's a huge, we have huge opportunities for staff. We have in Erasmus+ program, we have a bigger program, fortunately for this period. It's always organized by years for the period 21-27. We have for the first time here pupil mobility in there, but of course, huge opportunity also for staff mobility. We know that staff mobility is challenging in a situation of teacher shortages. But I mean, if we want to say, okay, teaching is a difficult job. I mean, it's important to learn all the time. I mean, if you want to keep this profession attractive, we still believe and try to communicate exchanges and collaboration with colleagues across borders is an important part of it and should be used. And we will hope that we will get some more information how we can improve that further in the midterm evaluation that we're just launching now, and where there is a public possibility to participate also right now. So Erasmus, staff mobility, another one which is very, very important. So these were the big ones that the ministers have identified at that time. I just want to share very briefly some others where they have possibilities. If you, for example, want to look for partners across Europe to launch a project, and if you're looking for material, I would like to draw your attention to the European School Education Platform, which offers material for teachers and anybody interested for education on topics like digital, like inclusion, but it also offers you the possibility to find partners across Europe. It offers cooperation via the eTwinning platform. So have a look if you don't know it already, and because it's really hands-on and very easy to achieve possibilities. Larry and Susan mentioned digital as a big challenge. I just want to mention briefly that we have a self-reflection tool where teachers can check either themselves as pedagogues or with their school, where are we in terms of integrating digital means into our pedagogy. It's called Selfie tool, Selfie for school, Selfie for teachers. If you're thinking how to better include it, have a look at it. It's quite useful to start reflection processes, and very similar on a topic that is quite high on the agenda. Recently, we've just last year, some colleagues, experts have released some guidelines on the use of artificial intelligence in education and training, hoping that this is also an inspiration for reflection. So I meant this is the part of the topics that are sort of really specifically addressed to challenges of teacher profession as such, if I may say so. I mean, you correct me if it's correct. I just would like also to highlight that any time in the recent year, when we spoke about inclusion, when we spoke about quality early childhood education, when we spoke about the green transition, when we spoke about the support to learners displaced from Ukraine, I mean, from each of these topics, we've had specific chapters on what does it mean for the teaching profession. What are the challenges? How could teachers and other staff be supported there? And that's why I'm coming back to some of the topics that I've seen in your campaign now, like I mentioned, you mentioned citizenship education, you mentioned inclusion. I mean, I think really good to also see how we can compare notes and to see how this we can benefit from each other's work. To conclude, I mean, what can you expect sort of in the coming weeks? So this is a bit the work program we have now, and we are sort of at midterm of this work program that ministers have agreed upon, and we are now sort of looking at what is still there. And there's a couple of initiatives coming up that I wanted to raise your attention to. The one thing, it's something that had been mentioned before, but is still to be delivered, is a learning mobility framework. I mentioned Erasmus, but it goes much beyond learning Erasmus. We still believe that for all learners, mobility is very beneficial, be it staff, be it learners, and that it should be expanded. It's not easy to do, so we are coming up with a proposal. If everything goes right, we are in a state of inter-service consultation at the moment, so the political level still has to give green light. But if everything goes right, in spring, the Commission will make a proposal for a learning mobility framework, which should give some guidance of what we expect of different actors from member states and others to make learning mobility a normality across Europe. The other thing I wanted to invite you, linked to mobility also, is the Erasmus Plus evaluation. I mentioned that. We're doing a midterm evaluation of our current program. We're doing a final evaluation of the last program. And at the moment, we have opened the possibility for everybody to participate, give us the feedback. So, which is open until December. So everybody, if you're interested, if you have some experience with the Erasmus program, please participate or use the opportunity to give us your feedback in this public consultation that is part of our Erasmus evaluation. And it's really good and important for us to know in order to make the program even better in the future. I would also like to say, I mentioned the European Education Era midterm evaluation. So we're having an event actually next week to look at the midterm evaluation, and teachers is one of the topics that really has been put on the agenda by the Commission and the Parliament to think what more can be done. So it's even more important that we get the input, and that's why we appreciate also thinking together with you in this week. But actually also that I meant to put here, we've launched a new policy network of teachers and school leaders where ETUCE and education employers and many other experts are participating. So we are very happy that also there we have a forum where we can together put our heads together in order to see what can be done. Maybe the last point I would like to mention is we have also in the framework of a midterm evaluation coming up the European Education Summit, and at that summit we'll present our yearly report on the state of education in Europe, which we call the European Education and Training Monitor. This year, it will focus on the situation of teachers across Europe. It will provide new information on where we see problems with shortages for Europe as a whole, but also at the national level. 30 of November is the date of the summit and the release of the non-monitor. Please have a look. One topic that I think also is very important that I would conclude with, I mean, we all know how important it is, but also how challenging all this is, which is why we have, for example, a group saying about education inclusion and well-being and supportive learning environments of learners and across Europe. And I can just assure you that in the line with what I presented, the focus on teachers and the teacher dimension, all our policies, that when we come up when these experts come up in the report in next spring 2024, we'll certainly also look at how what teachers need in order to support pupils' well-being, but also what can be done to support teachers' well-being, because of course it's a very challenging profession. No one has ever said it's an easy one, but I mean, what needs to be done in order to make sure that teachers has the best possible working conditions. Thank you very much, Susan and Larry, for the opportunity. I'm very much looking forward to comments.
Thank you, Michael. That was very interesting indeed. And thank you very much for contributing to our opening of this week and presenting with this rich work that the European Commission is carrying out. And indeed, we can see where there are topics that we are addressing, obviously, as education trade unions. I can just assure you from right now from my position here that of course we will be contributing to these different evaluations that you highlighted, and indeed we're very happy to be organizing together with our social partner at European level, the European Federation of Education Employers, but also the European School Heads Association, the European network on school leaders in particular, which is an important work also for us that has only just started. I'm very happy to hear that indeed at the education summit that's coming up at the end of this year, the focus will be on teachers and indeed also taking up the topic of the attractiveness of the teaching profession and raising the status of the teaching profession. Can I just ask you, Michael, are you able to stay with us for this event, or will you have to leave early? I'm asking because then I would like to offer colleagues to ask you questions, but I would like to do that once we have had also the other presentations. So we have a panel. Yeah, thumbs up. You're available to stay with us. That's great. Very good. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to you for your presentation. And then, colleagues, I will be moving us into the next session. And then we will come back to have an open discussion with comments, questions to our speakers, but also just in general comments on the different actions needed to raise awareness on the attractiveness of the teaching profession, to raise the status of the teaching profession, also give you the opportunity to share what are your thoughts, what are your ideas, and what's happening back home on this topic. I would like us now to go into the presentation from member organizations concretely and from teachers' experiences on what is needed to raise the attractiveness of the teaching profession. What are the actions that our member organizations are doing, and what are their key demands? So I know we put in this as a topic the good practices presentations, but the good practices are indeed the actions. So what are our member organizations doing? What are they calling for? What do they need to see changed at national level, at regional level, or in their schools? So we'll now be giving the floor to member organizations. First of all, to a representative from GEW, that's Katharina Klink, to present a case in Germany. She will be followed by Janka Takeva from our Bulgarian member organization, and then by Anabel Sotoya from our Portuguese member organization to showcase the case in Portugal. So I see that Katharina is already on the screen. So Katharina, I will give you the floor, and you have your slides also ready, I understand. So please, the floor is yours, and we look forward to hear about the actions in Germany. Katharina, we can't hear you. You have to open your microphone.
So now
Perfect. Excellent.
Perfect. So thank you, Susan, and good morning, colleagues. My name is Katharina Kling, and I'm a secondary teacher and the representative of the German Education Trade Union, GEW. I'll just share my presentation with you. So, okay. Good. Today I'll show you, as mentioned, some good practice from the German Education Trade Union. And first of all, I would like to apologize that I'm not keeping a free speech because unfortunately I didn't have the time to prepare one because of so many other events this week. So sorry for that, colleagues. And let's start the presentation. So, summarized, we support our members in 5 ways. First of all, through professional support during studies and traineeship. Then secondly, through qualified training, continuous qualified training. Moreover, we help teachers with excellent teaching materials and help them dealing with open educational resources. And last but not least, the GEW advocates for good working conditions, which is very important. So we start with professional support. The GEW supports teachers during their studies and traineeship in various ways, as a supportive and collaborative environment is crucial for a successful career pathway. Right from the beginning, we provide information, advice, we invite to events, and provide material. We also expanded our training in legal issues. Unfortunately, the teachers are not really optimally prepared for their life as a frontline worker, so often they just need the understanding and solidarity of their union. Therefore, one important focus is on individual consultation. At a political level, the GEW is committed to improve quality education at universities. In times of critical shortages of teaching professionals, we need to even more focus on qualified teachers with the right standards and competences to tackle the inequities exposed in society. It means far more than just having enough teachers. But unfortunately, the trend in Germany at the moment is to fill gaps with insufficiently qualified personnel. The demands on schools are changing, and with them, the challenges for teaching professionals. In order to meet these new challenges, quality training and continuous professional development are essential. We offer them free of charge for our members. Continuous professional development also helps teachers keep pace with the evolving education landscape, including new technologies or curriculum changes. With our events and materials, we ensure that our members are always up to date, which is leading, in best case, to increased job satisfaction. In this picture, you can see the title of one of our training programs. We offer further training courses from a wide range of topic areas every semester. This includes content such as specialist topics as well as health issues. We also take care of legal protection of our members. In the picture, you can also see our reference work for everything related to law, which is constantly updated and given free of charge to our members. And it is also used by many professionals in administrative offices too. According to surveys, many teachers find the preparation time and post-processing to lessons particularly time-consuming and stressful. So this is why we provide a large selection of teaching materials for them. We offer prepared lesson plans from members, for members, and practical help for everyday teaching. We also evaluate current teaching materials to ensure good quality and democratic standards. Here you can see an addition from our series with lesson plans, which covers all school subjects and all types of schools. You can also see practical teaching materials, here some science for the classroom. Materials of this type that can be implemented quickly and effectively are a great help for our members. When it comes to teaching material, a look online can often help. Free learning and teaching materials are available under the keyword Open Educational Resources. It's becoming increasingly popular in Germany. There are also platforms for planning and managing lesson content. Of course, teachers should be relieved of their teaching obligations through these materials provided, yet the question of quality and democratic control still remains unresolved. In the GEW's opinion, OER and digital tools should not be viewed uncritically. The influence of the private sector and lobbyists must be limited, and the commercialization of school education must be prevented. To ensure that OER does not become another gateway for that, education policy must safeguard the principle of public responsibility and transparency. Creating a positive and supportive school culture that values and recognizes the contributions of teachers will contribute to retaining them in their profession. This is why the GEW advocates for a lively and solidarity-based school life and adequate equipment for all schools. Studies commissioned by the GEW on the workload of teachers confirm that work-related stress increased dramatically, and the workload in schools is far too high. On this basis, the GEW demands measures to relieve the burden and raise the attractiveness of the teaching profession. Instead of referring only to teaching hours, the GEW emphasizes on the term working hours to make the actual scope of work visible and thus reduce the amount of unpaid overtime. And here you can see some of our demands, like providing the necessary resources in terms of staffing and budgets, quality training and continuous professional development opportunities, allocating sufficient time dedicated to students by minimizing the need to perform non-teaching tasks, creating a positive and supportive school culture that values and recognizes the contributions of us teachers. Despite the increased workload, our government did not adjust salaries of the different school types, which also leads to a dramatic shortage of teachers at less paid schools and is counterproductive for educational equality and a lack of appreciation for these teachers. That's why we have launched an annual campaign to support our members in the fight for equal pay. It's always in November, so it's upcoming soon. And we got loud this September with a nationwide educational protest day. Various unions, associations, communities, parents, and students came together to stand up for a common goal, a turn in education, a new start. Together, we are working on a change from the grassroots. We will not release the government from its responsibilities. So keep your fingers crossed for us, and thank you.
Katharina, thank you very much for your presentation and all those actions, and especially congratulations to that education protest day in Germany. I know it was all over the news, so you really raised the voice of teachers there on the demands of teachers and GEW across Germany. So indeed, keep up the pressure. And we expressed and continue expressing our solidarity with you on your demands. So thank you very much. Please stay with us, because indeed we'll be opening after for questions, and I'm sure that colleagues are very much also interested in hearing from you as a teacher, you know, firsthand, what do you see are the needs, what will make the profession more attractive. So I keep that question for you for later when we open the panel. Okay, great. Then I think if I'm not mistaken, we see that our Bulgarian colleagues are not yet connected and will be hopefully connecting soon. So I would like to give the floor already to Annabelle from FENPROF. Annabelle, are you? Yes, Annabella.
Yes,
yes, indeed. I'm sorry. Very good to have you here today. And so we look forward to hearing about the actions that you're working on, preparing on, in particular this week, but in general also in Portugal. So the floor is yours. Please.
Okay, thank you. Good morning to you all. First, on behalf of my federation, FENPROF, from Portugal, I send greetings to ETUC and to all the participants of this meeting, and we thank you for the invitation. Unlike the colleague before me, I won't talk about good practices, but I'm going to share the plan of actions and initiatives that teachers' unions will carry out in Portugal during European Week of Teachers, and talk about the reasons for teachers' struggle. Because this week it's a good opportunity to highlight our key demands. Next slide, please. Under the theme Teachers Demand Respect, there will be several initiatives of the most varied nature, from sport, culture, including concentrations, online debate, and the national teacher strike. Some of the initiatives will be developed only by FENPROF, but most of them will be carried out in convergence with 8 education trade unions. Next slide, please. FENPROF started indeed European Teachers Week a little earlier, last Saturday, with the 5th National Teachers and Education Race. While running or walking, teachers carried written messages about their problems and struggles so that everybody could see it on TV and on video. Next slide, please. Today, the 2nd of October, it was the beginning of the presentation of a campaign in defense of the profession and public school through billboards. Billboards will be placed on Portugal main roads with the following message: there is a teacher shortage. It is urgent to value the teaching profession. The fight continues in defense of public school. But this presentation was postponed until October 4th, as there will be today a negotiation meeting between the Ministry of Education and the unions about initial teacher education. Next slide, please. Tomorrow, October 3rd, there will be a teachers' concentration, Prime Minister's official residence. As part of this concentration, a plenary session will take place in which the promoting organizations will intervene, and at the end, a resolution will be voted to be delivered to the Prime Minister with our key demands. Next, please. Then on October 4th, we'll have the presentation of the campaign in defense of the profession, like I mentioned before. And there will be an approval of several resolutions all over the country in school meetings and in local concentrations and demonstrations. Next slide, please. Then on October 5th, to celebrate World Teachers' Day, we'll have 3 initiatives. First one, it's the inauguration of the statue of the teacher as a tribute to all teachers and educators in Funchal, Madeira Islands. Next, please. Then there will be the public announcement of the winner of the Urbano Tavares Rodrigues Literary Prize 2023. This is a prize promoted by FENPROF with support of an insurance company to distinguish writers who are also teachers. And in this picture, you can see the precedent winners of this prize. Next, please. And then we'll have an international online conference on the teaching profession, the teachers we need for the education we want. Next, please. And finally, at the end of the week, October 6th, Portuguese teachers and educators will be on strike. And understanding the importance of seeking alliances in society, teachers will distribute on that day a document to parents and to the educational community, explaining the reasons for their struggle, explaining that they are fighting for the sake of their students as well, explaining that they are fighting for quality education. Next, please. Portuguese teachers have a lot of reasons to fight for. The problems we have in Portugal are the same all across Europe. We are fighting against the devaluation of the teaching profession, which has as a consequence the growing shortage of teachers in schools and the lack of adequate investment in education, preventing schools from guaranteeing all the responses required of them. This underfunding, which is becoming chronic in Portugal, prevents the improvement of working conditions in schools, the improvement of students' learning conditions, and in the case of teachers, taking measures to make the profession attractive. Salaries are low, working conditions are bad, with an excessive workload and oversized classes. The reality we have is very worrying. Thousands of teachers are leaving the profession early. Young people who complete secondary education don't seek initial teacher education. They just don't want to become teachers. And older teachers look forward to retirement. There are not enough qualified teachers to replace those who are going to be retired. And that's a huge problem. And so the Portuguese government is trying to solve this problem not by attacking its structural reasons, but focusing on immediate measures. In other words, they intend to reduce the duration and the level of demand and of quality in initial teacher training to attract young people to the profession. But that is not the solution. We are totally against it. For us, teacher shortage can only be solved by valuing the profession on a professional, social, and material level, accompanied by improvements in working and living conditions. As we say here in Portugal, the time has come to respect teachers, to value their profession. That's why we find the European campaign on raising the value, the status, and improving the attractiveness of the teaching profession so important. It may be an excellent opportunity to enhance social awareness of the causes and consequences of teacher shortage. If the Portuguese government does not present effective solutions to change this situation, the struggle will have to continue. We won't stop. And that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Annabella, this was excellent. Thank you very much for your presentation, for showing us what you are doing in FEMPROF this week to highlight the issues regarding the teaching profession, the demands of the teachers, the demands that the union has indeed towards the government. And of course, I mean, we cross our fingers for these negotiations today, and look forward, you know, to that. I think you're building up really that pressure, with also looking out to the strike at the end of the week. Our solidarity goes out to you, to our colleagues in Portugal, and it was very good to hear indeed about again, you know, calling for that, to really give that respect, that value to the teaching profession, and to look at a structural change that is needed, not just these short-term measures to fill a gap or just to calm things down maybe, or give something a polish, but really the need for a structural change that is needed in Portugal. So thank you very much for that. And I'm sure that you have also raised now what shall I say, given the floor for colleagues who are connected here to raise questions, to get to know more about those activities that you're carrying out. And of course, we will be sharing that also on our website, on the social media of ETUCE. So thank you very much for that. Colleagues from the Secretariat, could I just hear if our Bulgarian colleagues are Bulgarian colleagues connected? They are trying to, I think they're trying to connect, but are not there yet. Then colleagues, yes, you can hear me now again. Sorry for that. So as the colleagues are not connected yet, we will just go into our discussion now. So I open the floor now for comments, for questions from colleagues who are connected, or if the panelists have questions to each other, then please raise your hand or write in the chat to show that you would like to pose a question to one of our panelists, or our panelists in general. So I think we've had really interesting presentations, and I'm sure that colleagues will want to share their thoughts or share their actions that they're carrying out, your actions that you're carrying out back home. And I will be asking colleagues also to help me to make sure that I don't overlook anybody raising their hand. So Trudy, I see that you're very active online. Can I ask you just to take the microphone and explain what you're doing? I think it's good to do that as we have the moment now.
Yeah. I was waiting for people to come up with questions.
Yes.
So
yes.
I thought I'd post it and then see what happens.
You have the floor.
Yeah. just to tell us that we were planning a strike exactly as in Portugal. In this case, it was very much about problems around salary raises to compensate the inflation.
Okay.
Because in other branch sectors, agreements were reached to at least compensate the inflation. We had a high inflation rate last year, up to 12% or even more. And in agreements in other sectors, we saw that they got at least 10 to 12% salary raise. And then comes the moment that the negotiations have to start for education. And then what happens? We know we have a huge teacher shortage. Everybody knows it. And still, the employers offer 5%. So we started to prepare strike actions for October 5. And we were already quite underway. But in the meantime, our negotiators, of course, were busy talking to the employers. And they had really a tough time. These were very tough negotiations, but just the last 2 weeks, agreements were reached. So finally, with the pressure of the strike, of course, behind us, because without the pressure of the strike, it wouldn't be even less, it would have been less easy. But now for secondary and primary education, at least 10% was reached. Which will be paid also backwards a few months. So in October, everybody will get a salary raise, which of course will not attract a lot more teachers, but will compensate the actual teachers. Because there's a lot more necessary to change the image of the profession. What we are now going to do now on October 5 is what we always do and what fits nicely into the whole week of teachers. We go into the schools with as many people as possible. So personnel of the offices, volunteers, elected board members. We all go in little teams into as many schools as possible and talk to the teachers and every other member of the personnel. And we always bring back a lot of very valuable information from the field. So that's for this week, but I will post some other links because we have also some actions on or some concerns about autonomy, but let other people speak. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Trudy. Thank you very much for pointing that out and for sharing what your actions are. And actually, while you were speaking, Trudy, I just also wanted to highlight to colleagues, we said we put forward in particular teacher shortage as one of the main issues across Europe, but we also have to be conscious that in some countries this actually that's actually not the main issue. In some countries, there are indeed also enough teachers. And I'm thinking of a recent discussion I had with colleagues back in Madrid, for example. I see Cookie is connected, so she might also want to explain a bit about the situation in Spain, which has got different challenges that Spain is looking at, or also our colleagues in Albania. So if you want to share, what are the issues that you are facing regarding the attractiveness of the teaching profession and the status of the teaching profession. But before I give the floor to other colleagues, I see that there are more questions or already some questions in the chat, and we've also got some raised hands. I will first take the question from our colleague from Romania, Alexandra Cornea. There's a question to you, Michael Teutsch. So a question to know more about the new call on teacher academies regarding it's a more technical question regarding the available budget, the number of partners and countries that are necessary for a project. And then I've got Rob Copeland. I see you have got your hand up, so I will give you the floor next for a comment. But first, Michael.
Yeah, thanks to Alexandra Cornea for the question. The call will be published in the course of November. It is actually not a specific call on teacher academies, but it's the general annual call for Erasmus Plus action. So don't look for teacher academies, look for the general call for Erasmus Plus actions for 2024. And then there is a specific few pages describing what is needed for Erasmus Plus teacher academies. And that's point number one. Point number two, how many? There's budget for around 15 new academies. So which also shows that given that we had originally an objective of 25, now we have 27 running, but given the high interest, we've come to the conclusion that we do another call to get more academies running. So for another 15, but that of course the exact number then depends on the budget that will be used by the applicants. And then as you talk about applicants, the minimum is 3 countries which need to be involved. But of course, as it's quite competitive, the better the quality and the better the network will be criteria for evaluation, but the minimum is 3. The applicants need to be providers of initial and or continuous education and training in the countries. Thanks for the question. And there will be an information session specifically on this part organized by the executive agency in the month to come.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing that. And then I pass the floor on to Rob Copeland. So Rob is a member of UCU, the Higher Education Union in the UK, and also our chair of the Higher Education and Research Committee. So Rob, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan, and hello to everyone. Yes, I just wanted to say a few remarks about some of the things we've been doing in the UK this week. Although not specifically organised around the theme of European Week of Teachers, I wanted to highlight that the issues that we're campaigning on are very much fit in with the demands of the campaign. And just 2 things. One, in higher education, we are in the middle of a new ballot for possible strike action in relation to issues around pay, but also some working conditions. So concerns around workloads and precarious contracts, which are a huge issue in higher education. But I wanted to just say something more specifically about what's happening in the further education sector in England. So these are the sort of publicly funded colleges that organise vocational education and training, amongst other things. And we have also a ballot there for in about 90 colleges in England to take possible strike action, again over pay, where pay has been particularly depressed or lowered in the further education sector. So we are actively encouraging our members to vote in that strike ballot, which is obviously a legal requirement here in the UK and very complicated processes. But it isn't just about pay, because the whole name of the campaign is called Respect Further Education, Respect FE, because it's not just about salaries, it's about issues around professional autonomy, lack of respect, kind of too many accountability exercises which deny further education lecturers the ability to do their jobs. And so it links directly almost to our colleagues from Portugal with that theme around respect. So just wanted to report back on some initiatives we're doing this week, but also will continue next week, because the ballot's continuing in both higher and further education. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob. That was very, very important to highlight, indeed, also the perspective from the higher education sector, and in particular about your actions that you're taking in the UK. So good luck with those ballots. I know that it's very important that you manage to get that threshold in order to go into action. So we wish you good luck and colleagues with that. And of course, it's very interesting indeed, that connection that you mentioned also, indeed, that respect, that is what you're calling for in the UK, as the colleagues in Portugal are. So we can clearly see the links, and thank you also for highlighting the issues, that it is yes, about pay, but also about professional autonomy, and about other issues that are connected, that make the profession more attractive, or would make the profession more attractive, and that are needed in particular in higher education and in further education. So thank you very much for that. I'm looking to see if somebody else has put their hand up, raised their hand to speak, or if there are more comments in the chat. I can't see any at the moment, so I will just go and ask Katerina, as I said earlier, asking you to prepare. As a teacher, you mentioned you are indeed a secondary teacher. So what is your personal experience where you say this is what is needed to make teaching more attractive? You know, from your experience as a teacher, your experience also with your colleagues at school. What are the issues, you know, that need to be raised?
This is not easy to answer, Susan. I'd say the biggest problem is that we have far too many kids in our classes, because the situation in the classes has changed dramatically. We have a lot of students who are ill, who have big problems at home. We often say they do not have parents, as they have parents, but they don't care at all about their school careers, not even about their private lives. So our students need the help of the school, the help of the teachers, to just get their minds free to start learning. This is the biggest problem we have. And of course, we need time for that. We need time to care for our students, time to listen to them, to go into talks and all that. And we are not anymore able to do so, because we have to do so many administrative stuff. We have so many students in our classes. About, I don't know if this is comparable to other countries, but we have about 30 students per class. And this is far too much to care for them. And we need to, because if you don't care for them, they are not able to learn. So we can't start teaching if we didn't solve the basis of their problems. So I think to us teachers, this is the biggest problem. And of course, Germany is known to love short-term measures. So they are not really motivated to change that. They buy a lot of cool digital tools for us, don't teach us how to use them. So they are lying around in rooms in schools, not used, because most of even the older teachers can't use them, but they don't care about the real problems we have. So I think, yes, the big classes, this is one of the biggest problems we have in the small amount of time we have for students.
Thank you, Katarina. That was really very interesting to share that with us. Indeed, the big class sizes, and I'm sure that has resonated now around our participants here and other colleagues saying, indeed, this is the situation I face in my class, or we know that our members are facing back home. So very important indeed. And that time, that need, just to have the time to indeed dedicate to the pupils, and very important to make that first have those conditions, actually, the good conditions for learning. And indeed, one of the issues we say in ETUCE, and that's what I just here again that you're confirming is, if we talk about a quality teaching environment, we're talking about the quality learning environment. It's both. So if the pupils are in a good context, in a conducive to learning, it means also that we have those conditions for the teachers. It goes hand in hand. So that should be really important an important message for ministries or the education authorities to hear. Indeed. I will see if there are more. So thank you very much for that. And I'm just looking to see if there are more questions. And actually, I see a question in the chat from our colleague Agnes. Agnes, do you want to? I see the question written, but do you actually want to pose the question live? Do you want to speak up and take the floor?
Yes, thank you very much.
Please.
My question is to the European Commission, to Mr. Michael Teutsch. We were discussing last week with certain experts of education trade unions here about recent council meetings of the education ministers, that one of the council discussed in the spring about teacher shortages. Concretely, they saw that 40% of the teachers in the EU are over age 50, but many of the colleagues here mentioned other problems why the profession is not really attractive. But when we are seeing the agendas and programs on the education priorities of the council presidencies, it seems that none of them are really planning to put this topic on their agenda, neither on labor shortages, teacher shortages, nor on attractiveness. And my question was that the European Education Area Progress Report in last November highlighted also the two biggest problems in the European Union. One is teacher shortage, the other one is equal access to education. Still, does the European Commission plan to have any proposal for the Council to really motivate member states to take concrete actions on this topic? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Agnes, Roman, for the question. I mean, there is no concrete proposal here on the agenda yet. What you know is that we are currently doing this midterm evaluation of the European education area, and there are 4 topics being highlighted to look more into it, and teachers being one of it. And we're actually going to discuss it first next week in the European Parliament, together with the European Parliament, in sort of where are we, what more needs to be done on making European education area a success. And then at the Education Summit that I mentioned before. And then based on that, I mean, the Commissioner Ivanova will have to make up her mind. And then even, we are at the end of mandate to be seen what can still be done in this mandate of this commission, or what will need to be done by the new commission, which will take office in a year from now. But I mean, in terms of the next steps, it's really this midterm evaluation of European education area, and then to decide on what the next steps are. But very good question as always. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. And so we hope that indeed that issue can be addressed at European level, or continue to being addressed. So I'm just looking at colleagues to see, is there anybody else who would like to make a comment on, share any actions that you're carrying out back home in your school, the experience you have, or in your education institution on the issue. I see also Christoph Schneider from SNES FSU connected. I don't know if you have any comment, if that resonates with you, what you have heard earlier.
Yes, hello everybody.
Hello, Christoph.
Thank you, Suzanne, for the presentation, and thank you to everybody, for especially to Rob. We are sharing the same committee, in Hearsk. So yes, in France, attractiveness is essentially the problem of pay. We have not enough money for teachers, and the government tries to make more money for teachers, and because of inflation, and it's still not it is still not enough. We have only 5.5% higher pay in September, and inflation is 10%. So on the last in July, we had the last recruitment of teachers, and there was a lack of 2,000 teachers in France. It's not possible. So as Rob said before on the chat, the problem is precariousness, and they have to recruit short contract, and of course, as the colleague from GEW said before, the most important thing is formation at the beginning of the career, and most of the precariousness teachers are not made to be teachers. They are here because they have nothing else to do, and they try to be teacher, and they are not prepared to that. And the formation they got for that is 3 or 4 days at the end of August, so it's not enough. But you can't solve this problem in this period. It's complicated in France. So good luck for the government, and lucky for the countries who have enough teachers, and and their fights are concluding, like in Romania, as we heard on the HERSC last week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christoph, for pointing that out, and indeed highlighting again the issue of precariousness, and how with the inflation in many countries, indeed the salaries are not covering for that inflation rate that we are facing in Europe. And indeed also for pointing out these short-term measures that some governments actually, there are quite many governments who are considering these to bring in people through flexible pathways and short-term solutions from other professions, and bringing in people into the teaching profession that are not really properly prepared for this career, for this crucial career in teaching, and not prepared for that, well, the pedagogical preparation, but also for the social and emotional challenge that teachers are facing, or that teachers have as part of the profession. It's a major part indeed in the teaching profession. So I see there's one more comment from Anne Keenan from, I guess, from EIS, because you mentioned as guest in our list. And do you want to speak up? As I can see your comment, you're confirming what we heard earlier, Katerina mentioned. Do you want to join?
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Yes, just to say what Katerina said really resonated with our position in Scotland. We have high levels of ASN, so 34% of the classes have been identified with an additional support need. And when that's considered in the context of our high class sizes, with class sizes of up to 33 pupils, then that's a huge task for teachers in Scotland. And we've been highlighting for a number of years the systemic underfunding of ASN across Scotland and the impact that that's now having both on teachers' health and wellbeing and on pupils' health and wellbeing. And since the pandemic, what we're seeing is a rising number of incidences of violence or distressed behaviour in classes, and unusually, particularly in the younger age groups, that arising from COVID, where they've not had the opportunities for socialisation and that valuable time in nurseries, and they're coming into schools without the speech and language ability to communicate their own needs. So what we're seeing is an increased level of distressed and violent behaviour at that stages, and then thereafter in secondary around about S3, the ages of about 14 and so on. So we're calling in our recent campaign, which is Stand Up for Quality Education, to address ASN for sustainable funding, sufficient funding for ASN, smaller class sizes, and more time for teachers to prepare. So we've called a 2020 campaign for a number of years for class sizes of 20 and time for teachers to prepare that we're only teaching class contact time of 20 hours. So those are key issues of the campaign. And the other element relates to workload, and all three interchange because one impacts on the other. So we launched that at our AGM in June and are continuing to push forward with that throughout the year, running a number of surveys with members and trying to increase visibility through the media, through engagement with politicians, and through our campaign with this. I'd just also like to back up what Rob says in terms of FE. We're having similar issues in FE. Fighting for the future of it is our campaign there. And this morning we had lecturers out on picket lines protesting against compulsory redundancy measures and seeking for a fair cost of living pay increase, which they've not had for over a year. And equally, we're balloting in HE. So very similar messages across the piece from Scotland, but solidarity to all colleagues on the call. And thank you for some really interesting presentations. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks, Anne. Thank you very much. And indeed, then fingers crossed for those ballots also in Scotland, and keep up that good work on the campaign for equality education. So we're following very closely on what's happening there, but I think it's very important to highlight that message indeed. And it's very visible that across Europe, teachers are facing indeed similar issues. And at the different levels of education. So be it higher education and research, be it secondary, primary education, early childhood education, but also in professional development, in vocational education and training. So with that, I would like to thank all colleagues for contributions, all speakers to contributions. I see also Michael Teutsch has to leave now. So indeed, we're at the end of our session. Thank you everybody for your contributions. We look forward to all the actions that will be happening across Europe this week and of course throughout our 2-year campaign. Please make sure to share them with us, with the Secretariat. We will indeed put them up on our social media, on our website, to give them the maximum of visibility to the work of the teachers. Our teachers are crucial. As we heard our president say earlier, quality teaching relies on quality teachers, and we need to give all that support that we can to the teachers to be able to do that, to inspire our young generation, to inspire young people and students across Europe. We have that message for all of us in Europe to raise the status of the teaching profession, to make the teaching profession more attractive. So we look forward to our joint actions, to your actions at national, at regional, at local level, in schools, in other education institutions, and continue the good work as our message goes out to Europe, to national policy leaders, European policy leaders at all levels. Thank you very much, colleagues. And with that, I say goodbye and good luck for the good continuation on our campaign. Thank you.